Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. I am Mrs. Riley Baker, also known as Ms. RB, and today we are going to explore pollination. A little over a month ago, on March 19th, we had the first day of spring. A lot has happened since then, has it not? What have you noticed is going on outside? Other than fewer cars on the road, lots of people walking their dogs, etc., etc. What have you noticed? Maybe the grass is really green, lots of birds, squirrels everywhere, some bees. When I look out the window or take a walk, one of the things I notice is flowers. I even have flower earrings on, yeah. There are flowers everywhere. Many trees, shrubs, and ground plants, called herbaceous plants, are flowering now in spring. Why? Why do you suppose? Why? If you would, look at the poster. And before we start, think, what do you need to survive as a human being? What do you need to survive? This poster says all living things need to breathe, eat and drink, have babies to continue the species, and respond to the world. If lightning strikes your house and catches it on fire, you got to be able to run out. Okay, but not just animals, folks. Plants as well. Plants need to breathe, eat and drink, have babies, and respond to the world. Now, flowers. What need do flowers fulfill for a plant? Which need? If you thought to yourself, have babies or reproduce, you are correct. Flowers' purpose is to help plants reproduce. So, next question is how? And how does pollination fit into all of that? Well, we're going to take it slowly, little by little. Figure it out. If you were going to try to teach this to a younger brother or sister, or perhaps your kindergarten buddy or first grade buddy, you might start with a poem like this. Plant parts. I drink with my roots. I stand with my stem. I make food in my leaves. I also breathe with them. Who knew? I attract insects with my flowers. My flowers make seeds. My seeds become baby plants. Yes, indeed. Okay, so we've narrowed it down a little bit. Okay, so flowers. Attract insects and make seeds. So I'm thinking that's a function or purpose. I'll write function this way. Function. Okay, and here's another part to it. First comes the flower, then comes the bee. Then comes the seed in its nursery. Okay, we've already established function. This is just the sequence. Sequence of events. All right. Now, this is an oversimplification of pollination, flower reproduction. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of all of that, I'd like to share with you a couple of big ideas. Okay, here's one of the big ideas. Form follows function. Mother Nature was the first to employ this concept way before humans even existed. Every feature of every living thing has evolved through natural selection to help that organism and its species survive. Notice, here's function, it's purple. Survive, survival is the purpose or the function. What's following it? Form. So the features of every living thing are determined after the function is determined. All right, so survival of the species has to do with reproduction and having baby plants, right? So now perhaps we can continue on. Just a couple of examples of that, though. Form. Why are leaves green and flat? Why are flowers all different colors? Why are some white, some yellow, some red, some purple? Why are bees' bellies and bodies fuzzy? Why are a hornet's nest containers, storage containers, shaped like hexagons? We could go on and on. But what I'm pointing out here is that the form of a living thing, of a feature of a living thing, has everything to do with size, shape, color, texture, density, elasticity, odor, all of those things that fall under properties of matter. Okay, so form. Think about that. Follows function. So keep that in the back of your mind as we go through and identify some of the parts of a flower and then try to figure out how they contribute to the function, which is reproduction and having plant babies. Okay. Move that down. Oh, this, by the way, is an Easter lily. And I have chosen to work with Easter lilies today because they're very easy in terms of seeing the plant parts. Plus, I had them already. Plus, most of the trees, shrubs, and plants in my yard are native, and they need to be out there right now. I didn't want to pull them in and cut them up. So, I'm going to deal with Easter lilies, which are very domestic bred, but still think they'll work. So, we got flower power, and we're going to focus on the parts of a flower that contribute to pollination. And I think you'll be able to do quite well. We're going to do the female parts first and the male parts. You know what? I forgot something. Before we start this, I want you to think about animals and how animals have babies. Okay, ready? Here's one kind of animal. Okay, we got a rooster. There's our rooster. The rooster's male. We have a chicken. She's female. The rooster and the chicken, they get together, they mate. The rooster fertilizes the female hen, and then what happens? She has lots of eggs, and then the eggs hatch into little chicks. Okay, maybe that'll help you in our discussion of the process of pollination. You might be thinking, wait a minute, are flowers male or female? Wait a minute, do flowers have eggs? Are flowers fertilized? Keep asking those questions. All right. Notice this vase shape here. This is the female part of the flower, and it's called a pistil. So yes, flowers do have female and male parts. Sometimes on the same flower, sometimes on different flowers. The top of the pistil is called the stigma. And I'm going to put sticky stigma. Why? Because the stigma produces nectar. It makes sugar water nectar, and it tastes good. Why would the flower want nectar? It's like a nectar soda. Who would want to drink a nectar soda? Think about it. It's this part right up here, this top part. Now, this long part between the stigma and the ball down here is called the style. This is the female part. It's shaped like a vase, and ladies like flowers in vases, and ladies have style. So this long part is called the style. And its purpose is to hold the stigma and the nectar sodas up. So maybe some animal might like it. Down here, the ball. The ball is called the ovary. All the way down, let's see. And you guessed it. In the ovary are ovules or eggs. So yes, plants, actually the flowers of plants, have eggs. And they have at least a female part. Let's move on down here. Same kind of flower. Might be a different flower. Easter lilies have both parts, female part and a male part on the same flower. Some flowers have only a female, in trees sometimes, and in one type of flower, and only a male in another. We'll learn more about that later, though. So, Here come the male part. Do you see the red stem with the little yellow top? That's the male part of the flower. And it's called a stamen. And notice, it has the word men in it. Well, that's helpful. The little yellow glob there is called an anther. And it rhymes with antler. Who has antlers? A male deer, right? Or a male moose. So that helps you remember. The anther rhymes with antler. And what's its purpose? It produces pollen. And that's very important, folks. Pollen is the plant's sperm, and it produces it and holds on to it right there. The red is called a filament. What do you notice? Here's the word men again. The filament holds the anther or pollen up high. Some bees actually like to eat pollen. So they might come and eat it and get it all over them. All right, oh, I'm jumping ahead. These are the parts. This is the form here. What's the process now? We'll get our little bee again. Now in the next lesson, we're going to learn why this is the case. But with an Easter lily, because it's white and because it smells so good, probably a moth would actually be the insect to pollinate it. But we'll just pretend. So here we have a little bee. And it's buzzing around and it's kind of hungry. And it sees some petals. It sees some white flowers. And it gets closer and it smells the wonderful scent. And it flies a little bit more and it's like, oh, how do I get there? How do I get there? And it lands on a petal. Flower petals are landing strips for insects. That's why they're there. And notice, every one of these petals has a little line. And the line guides the bee, in fact, it's called a bee guide, into the center of the plant or the flower where the pollen is. And as it's down there, the little bee, gets a little pollen on his belly. It's like, okay, where's that nectar soda? And it climbs up and it gets a nectar soda. Now, just so you know, if it's a bee, it probably has a straw. And it drinks the nectar soda with a straw. If it's a moth or a butterfly, it has a proboscis that unrolls. And it drinks a nectar soda with this. So, bee doesn't really know it has pollen all over its belly, but it just, I'm still thirsty, I'm still hungry. It buzzes around and buzzes around. We're going to pretend this is on a different plant. And it sees another flower and it smells that wonderful scent and it lands on the petal, which is the landing strip again. And it's right close to the sticky stigma. And while it's drinking, oh my goodness, some of those pollen grains land on the stigma. And the stigma is sticky and it holds on to them. And then the bee buzzes off. Folks, if it's the same kind of flower, The pollination process has just occurred. So let's see what happens next. Back to our design. Okay. Where am I? Oh, first, the little bee landed on the petal, which is a landing strip, folks. That's why flowers have them. Flowers pollinated by the wind don't have petals. So, petal. And the little lines that guide the insects towards the pollen, they're literally called bee guides. Oh, down here, and the Easter lily doesn't really have too much of this, is the sepal, just so you'll know. It just holds the flower onto the stem, just so you'll know. Okay, so our bee landed here, got a little pollen on its belly, then flew to another flower. This is really exciting. And deposited some pollen grains. I guess they should be yellow. Oops. Pretend those are yellow. Some pollen grains on the sticky stigma. All right, pollen grains, which, as I said before, hold plant sperm. These pollen grains grow a pollen tube down the style, find an ovule or an egg, and fertilize it. It's called a pollen tube. I think I'm using the wrong color, but that's okay. Okay, pollen grains, pollen tube. And down here, since I didn't label them before, we have our ovules, which are essentially eggs. So the pollen grains, or sperm, go down the style, fertilize the ovules or the eggs, and now the flower is done with its pollination process and its fertilization process. Now it's ready for the third process, which is germination, and the little eggs and ovules begin to grow into seeds. Okay, so we've learned about form to a certain degree. We've learned about function, and we've learned about the process of pollination. Let's see what it looks like, just as a review. We're going to dissect this Easter lily. And while I'm setting this up, think about what you've learned so far. Think about why there are flowers out there right now. Okay. All right, here we go. Haven't done this in a while. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to take this beautiful Easter lily. Yesterday it was literally dripping nectar. It's a little old, it's starting to dry up now. And I'm just going to cut it off. And this, Easter lilies don't have the sepals that some kinds of flowers have, but we'll say this is a sepal down here regardless. All right, I'm going to pull off some of these beautiful petals. Cut this. Here's a beautiful petal. Oh my goodness. All right, we can separate out the parts here. Let's see, which is our nicest petal? This is a beautiful petal. Maybe I can put up a few, eh? Okay, and notice the lines on the petals that are the bee guides. Okay, I think that's a gorgeous petal. We're going to tape it up to our paper. All right, here's our petal. And we can see bee guides right here. I can tape up the sepal, which is kind of goofy. Okay, now the stamen. Remember the male reproductive organ. Before we go, petals attract the pollinators with their color. A moth sees white at night. Think about that. It's a landing strip for the pollinators. Then the bee guides direct the pollinators to the nectar and to the pollen. And the sepal holds the flower onto the stem. All right, let's go to the stamen with MEN. We have quite a few here. Let's see, how many do we have in that flower? We had actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. We'll put them all up, okay? We'll put them all up here. Okay, the stamen. There. Okay, so the anther is the top part, makes and displays the pollen. The filament holds the anthers up for easy access. And now we'll just get a bit of tape and we'll get some pollen from this other flower. Put it right there. See if I can get some pollen to stick. Oh, you bet. Pollen grains. And inside the pollen grains are the plant sperm, which can fertilize the ovules. And finally, the female part. Here's the pistil. Now, the Easter lily doesn't have a round ovary, but many pistils do. So you have your stigma up here, which makes and displays the nectar and holds on to pollen. You have your style, holds the stigma up for easy access, and then down here you have the ovary, which makes and holds ovules or eggs which grow into seeds when fertilized. Now what I'd like to try, sometimes when you dissect these, you can actually see some little eggs at the bottom. So that's why I have this. Let's see what happens. See if I can see some little eggs. See if you can see some little eggs. Yeah, I'm not seeing any quite yet. Maybe this one didn't have them. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I see some little, there are some little white eggs right in there. I don't know if you can see them. Hard to see, but that's what those little white things are. Right there are the eggs that are inside, whoop, the ovary. Okay. Oh, I think there's some more. They're kind of all throughout. Little white eggs inside the ovary. Quite a few. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you've learned a lot today about why plants are flowering, the function of the flower, which is, of course, to reproduce or have babies, the process of pollination, which is pollinators or wind coming in and transferring pollen from one flower to another, and then the whole process of fertilization. So there's a lot more to this. We haven't explored form yet, which is why do some flowers smell lovely and others smell like rotten meat? Or why are some flowers shaped like a tube and some very flat? All of those, that falls under the form part of form follows function, doesn't it? Next time we get together, I am hoping that we can explore those ideas. In the meantime, I am going to send to your teachers, a recap of what we've learned about flower power and also pollination. And I'm going to also send her a goofy little match up the parts of a flower to their function. And stay tuned for our next episode. Bye.